The 1990s brought an economic recession that played a major role in the reevaluation of the American educational system. As educational budgets became tighter, society demanded greater accountability for what students were learning in schools, including the music classroom. The reform created by this increased desire for accountability included an emphasis on multicultural perspectives in the music curriculum. With support from President George Bush and state governors, the National Council for Standards and Testing published their 1992 report, Raising Standards for American Education, and began the movement towards the creation of national standards in multiple subject areas. As a result of this report's influence, the United States Congress passed the Goals 2000 Educate America Act in 1994. This law established national educational goals and called for testing at multiple grades to evaluate student competency in multiple subject areas. One of the objectives included in the Goals 2000 Educate America Act placed an emphasis on multicultural education. It read, "All students will be knowledgeable about the diverse cultural heritage of the nation and about the world community." In the 1995 case, Missouri v. Jenkins, the United States Supreme Court ruled that it was unconstitutional for judges to force desegregation in the public schools. Overruling previous district court cases, this decision limited judges' authority in educational integration to issues of segregation rather than desegregation. Judges could rule that any student of a cultural minority was allowed to attend any school, but they could not rule that any student of a cultural majority had to stay at that school. Other court cases, such as Adirond Constructors, Inc. versus Pena and Hopwood versus Texas, placed limits on racial identity as a determining factor in federal program or collegiate admissions. In response to the Goals 2000 Educate America Act, many professional and academic organizations began creating national standards for their subject areas. The National Standards for Arts Education was released in 1994. Implementation of the standards was left to the state and local school boards, and many districts have created their own standards and objectives that complement the national standards. However, tightened budgets across the country have led to a reduction in arts programs across all educational divisions.
I'm going to speak briefly about multiculturalism in the context of music education. By the 1990s, the conversation had essentially shifted from whether we should incorporate multiculturalism in our practice to how should we do it. In 1994, the American Alliance for Theater Arts, MENC, the National Art Education Association, and the National Dance Association formed a consortium to write the national standards for arts education, based on the recommendations of Goals 2000. These standards established a baseline for integrating multiculturalism into the arts curriculum. These standards would essentially become a model for states and local school districts to write their own standards. For several years, the Music Educators Journal had published issues concerning multiculturalism in music education, particularly teachers who were learning about other cultures and the need to find applications in the classroom. In 1992, they offered a special issue on multicultural music education that included a variety of resources and articles that educators could use to improve their practice. The Education Committee of the Society for Ethnomusicology published a series of articles in the Music Educators Journal that addressed the issue of integrating multiculturalism into music education. These articles included interviews with prominent ethnomusicologists, as well as information about various music cultures and discussions on how music educators should select the music that they teach. MENC, currently known as NAFME, published several resources to help practicing music teachers incorporate multiculturalism into their lessons. Their national conventions featured sessions, demonstrations, and discussions on how to do this. Of the various organizations that have impacted multiculturalism in music education, the International Society for Music Education could be considered the most influential. Its various conferences have been the origin of great strides in our field. The 1992 conference in Korea emphasized the sharing of music and was a catalyst to increasing the global exchange of ideas relating to world music in the music curriculum. In his keynote address, Bruno Nettel stated that the purpose of this conference was to lead students to an understanding of music as a worldwide and varied phenomenon, which will help them to comprehend all kinds of music and also provide an entry into understanding other things about the world's cultures, and to help members of all societies understand their own music. The 1994 conference in Tampa, Florida, featured presentations that addressed the issue of authenticity, as well as practical application issues of teaching music from other cultures. These issues included incorrect song translations or song translations without the appropriate cultural context, as well as general cultural inaccuracies. One particular discussion addressed the issue of having to teach a variety of music to students who come from a variety of backgrounds themselves. Finally, there was the 1996 conference in Amsterdam. This conference emphasized the world's music cultures through the theme of music as a universal language. Each day of this week-long conference featured info sessions, performances, and discussions regarding the music of a different continent, and educators from around the world shared their perspectives about multiculturalism in music education. Of all of the conferences through the 90s, this one was arguably the most important because it was then that the ISME revised its constitution to reflect its new mission. It is to assist music teachers in the preservation and teaching of the music cultures of human society while developing creative and competent musicians for the contemporary world.
In summary, multiculturalism has played a central role in objectives in education and music education since 1990. The passing of the Goals 2000 Educate America Act and the creation of national art standards have tailored music curriculum toward specific educational goals, including the implementation of multicultural music in the curriculum. However, some court decisions and budgetary cutbacks have made the realization of this multicultural implementation challenging. Organizations, including the Society for Ethnomusicology, the International Society for Music Education, and the Music Educators National Conference, renamed the National Association for Music Education in 2011, have proposed methods and techniques for implementing multicultural music education in an authentic context in the music classroom. Publications such as the Music Educators Journal have increased the resources available to assist music educators in multicultural music education. The efforts of dedicated music educators in the 1990s championed the truth that multicultural music education is not just an isolated component of the standards, it also provides opportunities for their full implementation.